description. Please hear as I speak of the flourishing of his daughter, Devahuti. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 22nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Haribol, all glories to Prabhupada. So now we're going to go to Devahuti's Lamentations. This is chapter 23. So that means we're going from Marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti to chapter 23, Devahuti's Lamentation. And this is text number 1. Maitreya Uvacha. Pitir Byam Prasiste Sadvi Patim Ingita Kovida Nityam Parya Charat Pritya Bhavaniva Bhavam Prabhum. And this verse says, Maitreya continued, after the departure of her parents, the chaste woman Devahuti, who could understand the desires of her husband, served him constantly with great love, as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, serves her husband. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Second. Yeah. Purport. The specific example of Bhavani is very significant. Bhavani means the wife of Bhava or Lord Shiva. Bhavani or Parvati, the daughter of the king of the Himalayas, selected Lord Shiva, who appears to be just like a beggar, as her husband. In spite of her being a princess, she understood all kinds of tribulations. She undertook all kinds of tribulations to associate with Lord Shiva, who did not even have a house, but was sitting underneath the trees and passing his time in meditation. Although Bhavani was the daughter of a very great king, she used to serve Lord Shiva just like a poor woman. Similarly, Devahuti was the daughter of an emperor, Swayambhuva Manu, yet she preferred to accept Kardama Muni as her husband. She served him with great love and affection, and she knew how to please him. Therefore, she is designated here as Sadhavi, which means a chaste, faithful wife. Her rare example is the ideal of Vedic civilization. Every woman is expected to be as good and chaste as Devahuti or Bhavani. Today, in Hindu society, unmarried girls are still taught to worship Lord Shiva with the idea that they may get husbands like him. Lord Shiva is the ideal husband, not in the sense of riches or sense gratification, but because he is the greatest of all devotees. Vaishnavanam yata Sambhu. Sambhu, or Lord Shiva, is the ideal Vaishnava. He constantly meditates upon Lord Rama and chants Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Lord Shiva has a Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is called the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. Unmarried girls worship Lord Shiva so that they can expect a husband who is as good a Vaishnava as he. The girls are not taught to select a husband who is very rich or very opulent for material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. Haribol, all glories to Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so uh, this verse says, after the departure of her parents, the chaste woman Devahuti, who could understand the desires of her husband, served him constantly with great love, as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, serves her husband. Well, what's interesting here is learning from the ideal example of Bhavani, uh, or in other words, the the wife of Lord Shiva. So Devahuti is learning from the example of the wife of Lord Shiva and how she serves her husband. Okay, so it says the specific example of Bhavani is very significant. Bhavani means the wife of Baba or Lord Shiva. Okay. So Bhavani or Parvati, the daughter of the king of the Himalayas, selected Lord Shiva, who appears to be just like a beggar, as her husband. In spite of her being a princess, she undertook all kinds of tribulations to associate with Lord Shiva, who did not even have a house, but was sitting underneath the trees and passing his time in meditation. Although Bhavani was the daughter of a very great king, she used to serve Lord Shiva just like a poor woman. Similarly, Devahuti was the daughter of an emperor, Swayambhuva Manu. Yet she preferred to accept Kardama Muni as her husband. She served him with great love and affection, and she knew how to please him. Therefore, she is designated here as Sadhavi, which means a chaste, faithful wife. Her rare example is the ideal of Vedic civilization. Every woman is expected to be as good and chaste as Devahuti or Bhavani. Today, in Hindu society, unmarried girls are still taught to worship Lord Shiva with the idea that they may get husbands like him. Lord Shiva is the ideal husband, not in the sense of riches or sense gratification, but because he is the greatest of all devotees. Vaishnavanam yata Sambhu. Sambhu, or Lord Shiva, is the ideal Vaishnava. He constantly meditates upon Lord Rama and chants Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Shiva has a Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is called the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. Unmarried girls worship Lord Shiva so that they can expect a husband who is as good a Vaishnava as he. The girls are not taught to select a husband who is very rich or very opulent or material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough and to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. Okay, so These are very important instructions that we're learning now. Why? Because, and there's a saying, if you uh, leave it up to the daughter, she'll marry either the musician or the one or the man that plays the drum. So uh, that's why uh, unmarried girls in traditional Vedic times would worship Lord Shiva so they could expect a husband who is as good a Vaishnava as he. The girls are not taught to select a husband who is very rich or very opulent for material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of householders' life. Okay, so there are different, let's say, standards of how uh, a girl accepts a husband. But the parents of the girl should analyze and vet the qualities of the uh, potential groom uh, or potential husband to whom they're going to give their daughter in marriage. And if it's someone who is like Lord Shiva, uh, in other words, someone who is renounced uh, from sense gratification and is a good devotee or a good Vaishnava. Uh, that's why it says the girls are not taught to select a husband who is very rich or very opulent for material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva, now in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. Now you have to understand, Lord Shiva doesn't do anything for his wife. He doesn't have a house, he doesn't have a car, he doesn't have a credit card, he does nothing. And he's just meditating all the time. So uh, is that what young girls should be taught to seek out a husband like that? Well, and therefore it says the wife is dependent on the husband. And if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. Okay, so normally in the Vedic time, it's uh, the father of the daughter that chooses the husband, and he has to uh, note the spiritual qualities of that potential husband. So, is the boy a devotee? Is he initiated by a bona fide guru? Does he have a good reputation of serving his spiritual master? Uh, so these are the type of qualifications that the father looks to. It's not that, oh, he's rich, he comes from a wealthy family, and he's handsome, and so forth. Those are, okay, those are certain qualities, but the real quality is he a devotee, a good devotee? If he's a good devotee, then the father can, uh, in other words, uh, offer his daughter in marriage, knowing well that his daughter will be following her husband in practicing Krishna consciousness. That's more important than marrying the girl into a rich family or a famous family. It's better to be in the family of a genuine devotee. Um, so, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. Basically, Lord Shiva didn't do anything for his wife, Parvati. She didn't have a house, although people worship Parvati to have material benefits. But she herself did not have any material benefits from her husband, Lord Shiva, yet she served him with unflinching devotional service. So this is what you would call shocking, because uh, what's being recommended here is that the real qualification of a husband is if is the fact that he engages in devotional service, and therefore, if a young girl marries someone who's engaged in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband. And if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. So it's not saying that you judge the qualification of a potential husband by seeing how much money he makes or how much, let's say, mundane knowledge he knows. It's rather, is he a devotee or not? The wife will have to depend on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him, the husband, service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. Now, uh, the and previously women would worship Lord Shiva to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service. Devotional service is the real criterion, and not only being highly educated. Like if you look in some of the uh, what do you call those magazines or uh, you know newspapers where uh, women are soliciting, uh, you know, uh, to have a husband. They usually say, daughter of a Brahmana who has a PhD, and therefore she will only marry someone who has a PhD. Have you ever seen those advertisements? Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of advertisements like that. So that's not the real qualification that one should look for. Uh, now, if there is someone who is a devotee and also has a PhD, then that's okay. But if someone just has a PhD and is not a devotee, then that's not right because uh, that means that the person could be a drunkard even though he has a PhD. Yeah. So the mundane education is not a qualification for a husband. The qualification for a good husband is that not only he's a devotee, but he also has all good qualities and also is honest and works in without any let's say cheating or lying or things like that. So yeah, one time I was talking to uh, my one of my sons, and I said to him, I said, in life, if you become a good devotee, that's worth a lot more than becoming a good scientist or a good businessman. Uh, you can also be a good businessman and be a devotee, or a scientist and be a devotee. But just being a good scientist is not what you should aim for. You should aim for being a good devotee, an honest person, and a clean person. That's the qualification that a father should look for. If the groom is honest and clean and is engaged in devotional service, then there should be a number one choice for a husband for the daughter. And therefore, it says here, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband. And if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. Many girls are getting married today to men who are not actually devotees. They might be good, let's say, uh, in the sense that they have a very good job and they come from a good family and so forth. But that's not the type of goodness that should be looked at. One should look and see if the boy is actually a devotee or not. And if he's not a devotee, then you shouldn't give your daughter to such a person because uh, such a person can be addicted to bad habits, even though he has a good job, even though he has good education, etc. So here it says, it says that today in Hindu society, unmarried girls are still taught to worship Lord Shiva with the idea that they may get husbands like him. Lord Shiva is the ideal husband, not in the sense of riches or sense gratification, but because he is the greatest of all devotees. Vaishnavana Yata Sambhu. Sambhu, Lord Shiva, is the ideal Vaishnava. He constantly meditates upon Lord Rama and chants Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Shiva was a Vaishnava, has a Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is called the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. Unmarried girls worship Lord Shiva so that they can expect a husband who is as good a Vaishnava as he is. Now, is that what fathers are looking for today and mothers? Uh, I don't think so. They're looking to see if the boy is highly educated in mundane knowledge, has job, can earn money, and has a nice car, is able to support the girl. Uh, okay, they are qualifications, but here it's different. It's saying that the boy should be uh, an ideal Vaishnava. Now, ideal Vaishnava may be poor or may not have a lot of opulence. So, just because someone has a good mundane education and a good mundane job, should that be the number one qualification for a husband for a young girl? Uh, No, uh, having finding a boy who's a good devotee who works honestly and is able to maintain, like, he should be able to maintain himself as well as his wife and eventually his children, but he should be a devotee. So being a devotee is the number one qualification. The number two qualification should be that he's capable of working and maintaining a family. Now, most of the time, people don't always see if someone is a good devotee. They just try and see if someone is earning a good living and is able to maintain a certain level of material achievement. But that doesn't mean that they're a good person. Uh, so there's different ways of choosing a potential groom or husband for a daughter, but the best criterion is if the boy is actually a devotee of Krishna and practicing and has been trained in that way since being a child and up until adulthood. If if a person is a genuine devotee, then they will be able to maintain a wife honestly. They don't have to be rich, but they have to be practicing Krishna consciousness seriously. Although today people don't really look at that type of qualification. Maybe some people do, but not all people. They're more interested in if he has a, a degree in some kind of field of education, or and if he is a good has a good salary working as a student in some company, and they don't actually carefully see if such a person is a devotee. So here it says that uh, unmarried girls worship Lord Shiva so that they can expect a husband who is as good a Vaishnava as he. The girls are not taught to select a husband who is very rich or very opulent for material sense gratification. Now that doesn't mean you can't marry someone who is rich or opulent. It just means that even though they may be rich or opulent, they must also be a devotee. Uh, so if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. So that's the real qualification. The wife is dependent on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. Okay, so the wife should be trained to see her husband as, uh, to serve her husband with uh, love and devotion. But how can you uh, serve a husband who has no qualifications as a devotee? You can, but uh, it doesn't help the wife uh, because she'll always be dependent on the husband. And if the husband is not a Vaishnava, then it'll be much more difficult for her to be engaged in devotional service and at the same time render service to the husband. Okay. So then, how should parents uh, who are going to choose a potential man to be a husband for their daughter, how should they look? Uh, so uh, they should look not to only look at their uh, education and their ability to earn money. They should see if uh, the husband has the qualifications as a good devotee. Then they can be confident that the uh, the husband will or the boy will take care of the daughter properly. So here it says Lord Shiva is the ideal husband, not in the sense of riches or sense gratification, but because he is the greatest of all devotees. Well, Lord Shiva never gave his wife Parvati a house, credit card, a car, etc. uh, he was always meditating, and she was without all the let's say benefits of having a rich husband. Although she herself gave great benedictions to women that worship her, but she herself did not enjoy those same type of benefits, and she was completely very, very renounced, like her husband. So this is what you call an anomaly. Here's a lady that young girls are praying to have a, a a good husband who can support them, but she herself has a transcendental husband who doesn't really give her anything, right? Doesn't give her a house, doesn't give her a car, doesn't give her a credit card, doesn't give her anything, right? And he's always meditating on Krishna. Uh, and so this is what you would call an anomaly. It doesn't fit the normal definition of a good husband. But yet, Lord Shiva is the best husband because he's the best devotee. Vaishnavanam yata sambhu. Lord Shiva is the ideal Vaishnava. He constantly meditates upon Lord Rama and chants Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so I don't think anybody would well, let's say I'm not going to say nobody, but most people would not look for that qualification in a potential husband for their daughter. They would say, "Well, wait a minute. He doesn't have a good job. Uh, he doesn't have a house, and he's not capable of giving anything to my daughter. But he gives actually the best thing. So because he himself is living a completely spiritual life, and the girl that marries him will also have a complete spiritual life. But that's not the model that people are looking for. They want to see how much money he can make, and they want to see what kind of car he has, and and so forth. They're only looking at the material qualifications. They're not really analyzing carefully the spiritual qualifications. Okay, and uh, here Lord Shiva is the ideal Vaishnava. He constantly meditates upon Lord Rama and chants Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now that's interesting. It doesn't say he's chanting Hare Krishna. It says he's chanting Hare Rama. Of course, Rama is another name of Krishna. And he has his own Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is called the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. Okay, and it's a fact that unmarried girls traditionally worship Lord Shiva so that they can expect a husband who is as good a Vaishnava as Lord Shiva is. The girls are not taught to select a husband who is very rich or very opulent for material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. So I remember one time I was performing a marriage, and I was giving advice to the groom, and I told him that it's really important that you always remain faithful to your wife and don't engage in any philandering with other women. And then he said, "Well, I don't accept that. You know, this is right in the marriage. And he said, I don't accept that. And he was, a complete rascal. I mean, what are you going to do? The family has chosen this guy, and they asked me to perform the marriage. And when I'm giving good advice, he said, I don't accept it. They're crazy. You know, we should have said at that point, or the family should have said at that point, well, if you don't accept that, then we're canceling the marriage. But no, they just, went ahead. I was surprised because the boy was not ashamed to say what he said. No, I don't accept that. Meaning, I want to philander. I want to also, if I want, go around with other women also. You know. So this is how low class people have become today. That's why it says the girls are not taught to select a husband who's not very rich or very opulent for material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband. And if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders him service. This reciprocation of service and love between a husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. Okay, so now we have a very clear understanding. If you're a father and you have a daughter, this is the qualification you need to see in a potential groom for your daughter. And if he's not a Vaishnava, then it's not a good selection. Boy should actually be a Vaishnava, a sincere practitioner of Krishna consciousness. Then the daughter will share the devotional service of the husband because she's going to render him service. This reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. But if the wife just, likes to watch television, eat meat, and so forth, or the husband she marries is a meat eater and a gambler and so forth, it's not good. So the wife has to be qualified, or the potential wife has to be qualified, and the husband has to be qualified. And the parents have to be qualified to choose a qualified boy. If they're all not qualified, then the whole thing is a disaster, right? And it won't show right away, but as time goes on, it will show that it's a disaster. Okay, so now we'll go on to text number 2. O Vidura. Devahuti served her husband with intimacy and great respect, with control of the senses, with love and with sweet words. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here, two words are very significant. Devahuti served her husband in two ways, Vishrambena and Gauravena. These are two important processes in serving the husband or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishrambena means with intimacy, and Gauravena means with great reverence. The husband is a very intimate friend. Therefore, the wife must render service just like an intimate friend. And at the same time, she must understand that the husband is superior in position, and thus she must offer him all respect. A man's psychology and woman's psychology are different. As constituted by bodily frame, a man always wants to be superior to his wife. And a woman, as bodily constituted, is naturally inferior to her husband. Thus, the natural instinct is that the husband wants to post himself as superior to the wife, and this must be observed. Even if there is some wrong on the part of the husband, the wife must tolerate it. And thus, there will be no misunderstanding between husband and wife. Yeah, like if you look at Gandhari, she married her husband who was blind. And so that she would never feel herself superior to her husband, she blindfolded herself. She didn't make herself blind, but she kept the blindfold on always so that she would never feel superior to her husband. Now, this is a very, very significant statement because if the wife feels that she's superior to her husband, it's not going to be a happy marriage for the husband and nor for the wife. She'll always be, uh, she'll be what's called a cuckold. Why don't you look that word up, a cuckold? Uh, that means that she's always, I think that's what it means. She's always bossing her husband around. Okay, so that's why it says here, a man's psychology and a woman's psychology are different. As constituted by bodily frame, a man always wants to be superior to his wife, and a woman, as bodily constituted, is naturally inferior to her husband. Thus, the natural instinct is that the husband wants to post himself as superior to the wife, and this must be observed. Even if there's some wrong on the part of the husband, the wife must tolerate it, and thus there will be no misunderstanding between husband and wife. That's a statement that most women, I don't know, I'm not going to say most women, but a lot of the women would reject today. And what does it say about cuckold?
C-A-C-K-L-E, cuckold, C-U-C-K-O-L-D, right? But it refers to a man whose wife has been unfaithful to him.
Oh, maybe I chose the wrong word then.
You talking about henpecked?
Okay, say that again, the definition for cuckold.
The term cuckold refers to a man whose wife had been unfaithful to him. Traditionally, it carries a somewhat derogatory connotation and implies that man is aware of or is being humiliated by his wife's infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
So the verb form cuckolded means a man makes him is to make a man into cuckold or to be unfaithful to him, often with the added implication that
I'm not understanding what you're saying. Read slower.
So the verb form cuckolded means to make a man into a cuckold or to be unfaithful to him, often with the added implication that others know about the infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay. That's hellish
yeah.
for the man. His wife is having sex with other people. Okay, so yeah, there's all kinds of horrible things happening in the world today. That's one of them. What's interesting in this purport, it says here, a man's psychology and woman's psychology are different, as constituted by bodily frame. A man always wants to be superior to his wife, and a woman, as bodily constituted, is naturally inferior to her husband. Thus, the natural instinct is that the husband wants to post himself as superior to his wife, and this must be observed. Well, it's not always observed. And actually, I mean, women like to be, let's say, servant of the husband, but there are women that want to be the boss of the family, and they want to have what you would call equal rights with the husband. Uh, and so that's not going to work very well in a marriage. And then there are women that want to have superior rights or who think they are superior to their husband. So they're always bossing the husband around. So that puts the husband in a very awkward position. So uh, here it says, uh, yeah, even if there is some wrong on the part of the husband, the wife must tolerate it. And thus there will be no misunderstanding between husband and wife. Vishrambena means with intimacy, but it must not be familiarity that breeds contempt. And that's an important statement. Uh, familiarity that breeds contempt. So when a wife sees a lot of faults in the husband, she becomes a great, what you would call, critic of her husband. And is always trying to correct him, is always always complaining about, how he didn't do this, he didn't do that. Uh, but here we see it says, according to Vedic civilization, a wife cannot call her husband by name. In the present civilization, a wife calls her husband by name, but in Hindu civilization, she does not. Thus, the inferiority and superiority complexes are recognized. Uh, so, uh, would do you think women will accept this? Modern women accept this? Some, but not all. They want equality uh, and sometimes superiority. Uh, here it says, even if there's some wrong on the part of the husband, the wife must tolerate it. And thus there will be no misunderstanding between husband and wife.
what about the opposite?
Uh, where the husband has to tolerate the wife. Well, that's the women have uh, more or less the right to torture the husband, but the husband doesn't have the right to torture his wife. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why the boy has to be a Vaishnava. Vaishnava means tolerance.
Yeah.
Wife has to be Vaishnava. By serving she will also become Vaishnavi. So that's what it is. Like, both are expected to be Vaishnava,
No,
Vaishnavi.
but what happens sometimes is they get married and the wife is subordinate to the husband. But as time goes on, the wife sees some, defects in the husband, and now refuses to serve the husband. Right. And so, actually, that's a good thing because then the husband realizes that in the material world, there's no ideal situation, so you have to learn to tolerate it. Uh, and divorce is not a solution because uh, it doesn't mean that the next woman you marry is going to be ideal, right? The next woman could be just as bad as the previous one. So you have to learn to tolerate things. The wife has to learn to tolerate things, and the husband has to learn to tolerate things. You make the best of a bad bargain, as they say in English, the best of a bad bargain. Now, Prabhupada, at one point, he spoke with his father and he says, "Look, I want another wife. I don't like this wife." And the father said, "Oh, that's very good." And Prabhupada was a little bit confused. He said, "No, that's very good. You don't like your wife. You won't be attached to her. And so at the moment of death, you won't think about your wife." And so Prabhupada never got rid of that wife. He kept her and stayed faithful, but he didn't like her at all. Because she would drink coffee and she would not really as interested in spiritual life as Prabhupada was. But he just tolerated it. And eventually, he took sannyas, and that was the end of having to tolerate her. So no situation will be eternal. I mean, uh, and especially if you follow the Vedic, let's say, uh, process. The Vedic process is up until 25 years, the boy remains a celibate, and he learns some kind of way to maintain himself and a wife and children. And then he gets married for 25 years. And then he begins to, uh, engage in tapasya and give up, household life, and then becomes a sannyasi. So this is the normal way. And now, if the wife is also a good devotee, there may not be any reason for the husband to take sannyas because uh, he has a very uh, good Vaishnava wife. So they can live together and preach together and, not be attached to a house and family life. So they travel together and preach. Uh, and then at some point, the wife will give permission to the husband, and then he takes sannyas. So there are different ways to look at, or different ways to understand uh, marriage and responsibility. But the main thing is that the husband should be a good devotee and the wife should be a good devotee. That's ideal. And what is not good is if one of the two is very materialistically inclined. So there's going to be a lot of problems in life. Now, women are, in, in general, uh, not, let's say, capable of being very spiritually strict. But if they have a good husband, they become spiritually strict. Uh, on their own, they can become spiritually strict, uh, but they might not be able to be fully surrendered or respectful of a husband, especially if they think they are superior and the husband is inferior. So let's look at this again. It says a man's psychology and woman's psychology are different. As constituted by bodily frame, a man always wants to be superior to his wife, and a woman, as bodily constituted, is naturally inferior to her husband. This natural instinct is that the husband wants to post himself as superior to his wife, and this must be observed. Even if there's some wrong on the part of the husband, the wife must tolerate it. And thus, there will be no misunderstanding between husband and wife. It's a very big statement, very, very big statement, because there is difference between the psychology of a man and a woman. Okay, now, are girls taught to be like this? I don't think so. Everybody, every girl I've ever seen, always insist on equality. We have to be equal. But that's different than what's being described here. Yes.
Oh, yeah, here the word says this must be observed. What does it mean like?
You have to do like this. The boy has to be superior, even though he might be inferior, even though the wife might be superior. So this is why Gandhari, when she married her husband who was blind, she put on blindfolds, although she could see, so she would never feel superior to her husband. Right. Um, I don't know. Do you think there are many girls that would do that? No, not really. That's why, at least 50% of marriages end in divorce because the psychology of the man and woman are not understood properly. And 50 marriages fail. Now, the second marriage, they also fail, but more than the first marriage. They fail like 60, 70%. And the third marriage, they fail even more. Okay, so I think our time is up. Uh, just one other point. According to the Vedic civilization, a wife cannot call her husband by name. In the present civilization, the wife calls her husband by name. But in Hindu civilization, she does not. Thus, the inferiority and superiority complexes are recognized. And yeah, that's the second verse. All right. Anyway, yeah, actually, the wife should uh, not say the name of her husband, but say pati, you know, and husband should also refer to his wife as patni, pati and patni. But if you say, hey, Joe, that's not, that's not proper.
Actually, most of at least in the Ramayana and all this, the husband calls the wife as the mother of the child.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Right.
also.
So typically, like,
What's the name? How do
I
you,
mean,
how do you
like,
say that?
for example, hey, Samat Gima.
Referring the wife with the help of the kid's name. That also they do it.
Okay.
Some of the culture.
Okay.
Like they will say the kid's mom, come here or something.
The kid's mom. Yeah. Makes sense. They
That's
don't use
another
it.
way.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it
But they take name as well. I have seen in
husbands.
yeah, name as well for the wife.
Mhm.
But then my question is, Mara, this is more on how the material people deal, right? Like superior, husband is feeling superior. Like, so what will happen in case of Vaishnava? Like when husband, wife, the whole family is Vaishnava, husband should not feel superior. That's the etiquette. Like,
No,
Because
no. Husband should be superior.
he is superior, but he should feel inside like being a.
I can be very humble. Yeah.
So this one is referring to the psychology. Even if you're a Vaishnava, there's a natural psychology that just because you're a Vaishnava, if your wife starts treating you really badly, then there is a natural psychology that will trigger, right? So this is more to take that into consideration. I mean, first of all, I think by being a Vaishnava, there is a band of, you know, like for example, people don't take extremes, right? Like, don't break relationships, we have extramarital relationships, or they don't cheat, all those kinds of things. So there's already a safety zone, but within that also how to live happily, right? So and happily.
Well, let's put it like this. Unless the boy has been trained to be a Vaishnava, uh, he won't be able to tolerate things. Uh, and and if the wife is not, or the girl has not been trained to be a Vaishnavi, she will not be able to tolerate things. So there's going to be, you know, a problem. They'll be arguing all the time. Yeah. I remember one long time ago, I stayed 1 week with my uncle and his wife. So my uncle was a very, strict person. He would wake up every morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, uh, but he didn't chant Hare Krishna. He would go down into the kitchen right away and start cutting uh, uh, vegetables into very small pieces. So I asked him once. I said, "How come you wake up very early and go down in the kitchen and start cutting, the vegetables in real small pieces?" He said, "Well, this way, my stomach doesn't have to work hard to digest." Whoa, you know, that's how that's the type of person he was. And so he would wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, and then his wife would wake up around 6 o'clock. So as soon as she would come down, they would start arguing, and the argument wouldn't stop until they went to sleep at night. It was like hell for him. And what happened was one day after the normal argument, he got so angry, just put on his coat and slammed the door and walked out and got run over by a bus and died.
Oh,
Because he was so angry, right? He was not paying attention to what he was doing, you know. Uh, but he didn't die right away because he was like an Iron Man. Right? He died after like 3 weeks, in the hospital. Yeah. See, that's what happens when you can't tolerate anymore. The wife's pestering, and she knew exactly how to get him upset. You know,
no, I love.
he knew exactly what to say, what to do to get him upset. And one day he got so upset, he put on his coat, he slammed the door, walked out, and got run over by a bus. And he didn't die. He died after 3 weeks. So we have to be very careful. That's why ideal life is up until 25 you remain celibate, and then you get married, and then 25 years you're married with a wife, and then after that you begin to break the attachment to house and uh, home and hearth, and you go on pilgrimages with your wife. And then when the wife gives permission, you take sannyas, and she goes and lives with her older sons, her mature sons. So but if the wife is as good a devotee as the husband, and hopefully the husband's a good devotee, then they might not have to separate, but they would then go together uh, without attachment to their home and on pilgrimages together and preach and associate with holy people. But not all women like to do that. So then there would be this separation. The husband would take sannyas and the wife would stay at home with her son. Now, what happens if she doesn't have any sons? Well, she would stay with the daughter. But oftentimes, Hindu women say, "No, no, I can't stay with my daughter." You know, so then she's stuck. You know, uh, okay. So I think we'll stop there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I couldn't understand why women will not stay with their daughter. I mean, traditional Hindu ladies. Yeah, good.
Well, in traditionally, what I had seen, even not just staying, even they will not take the water.
Really?
Forget about the food.
Yeah.
The daughter side parent, they visit their uh, daughter's house. They will not eat anything.
Really?
That's what I have seen. Like my grandmother, and when they will visit their place, they will not take.
Why
And
is
if they will
that?
take, they will pay the money. That was okay.
Really? Pay money.
If there is very big situation that you have to eat or something,
Yeah.
they will give something in return, like
Yeah.
money or something in return.
Basically, they don't want to be seen as a burden.
Is that it? Okay.
So that way, they don't cause any.
But what if the mother gets, I mean, the grandmother gets sick and she doesn't have a husband is not there. He died.
And then there's no son.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you like daughters do take care nowadays, but
Yeah.
generally, if you have a son,
Yeah.
then you avoid being, visiting daughters
Mhm.
thing too much because then you are not interfering into their marriage.
Marriage.
So
Okay.
But I think what is my observation is if the exception happens, then situation is different. Like mother is getting sick or something.
Mhm.
Those exceptions are
That's what you see. I mean, I don't know if it's still going on, but you would see in Vrindavan all these women, uh, elderly women come to Vrindavan to die. And their only way of maintenance is through begging. And they left the family because they don't want to be a strain on the family. You know? And this one lady stopped me just in Vrindavan, and she kept pointing at a mango. Right? And eventually, I understood what she was trying to say. I mean, I didn't speak Hindi; she didn't speak English, and she was an elderly woman, and she was she kept pointing at a mango. So I bought the mango and gave it to her, and she was very happy. Yeah, so there are a lot of women that come to Vrindavan to die. Now they do have ashrams for those type of women. Uh, at least they can have, a place to stay and eat something. And they basically are chanting all the time. You know, Haribol. Okay, all goes to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare